Hello, YouTube. This is Tammy Pie, and I'm back with another video. I was rewatching Simon at the Hermit's Cave's latest Cup of Ketchup and Cards, and he posed the question: does tarot need to evolve for the modern age? And this is in part because he had done a walkthrough of a new deck called, I believe it's the New Journey Tarot, which removed, I think, the quartz and added in some other cards and switched it around. I think the deck was done by a pretty famous tarot author, John Matthews. And honestly, I think he's late to the game. I think tarot does evolve. Short answer is yes and no. Okay? So what I want to do, I want to look at some cards, look at some decks. Ooh, let's look at this one too, because this is definitely one of those. Okay. And of course, the pile grows ever larger if I sit still for very long. So let's get into this. Let's talk about the Rider deck, Pamela Coleman Smith and Edward Arthur Waite. And of course, this is done in 1909. This is an 80s copy. Fabulous cardstock. Oh. So Pamela Coleman Smith was an illustrator in her day, fairly famous, fairly prolific, and forward thinking. I think, she had already had a pretty major career as an artist before she illustrated Arthur Waite's ideas into the arguably most popular deck of all time. Certainly the most copied deck of all time. So, and before that, we had the Marseille cards, which stem from the earliest decks, which came out of the Italian and French wealthy people who like to gamble and play cards, right? So we have the Viscontis, and then we have the beautiful Marseilles. This is Marcelo Robledo, the fabulous 2012 mass market. Oh, this deck is just delicious. This is so good. Okay, so we have the Marseille. Certainly, the Marseille was well within its rights to have court cards, because in its day, they had courts, they had kings, they had queens, they had princesses, they had knights, the Pope, the, tower, etc., etc. All right. And then, of course, really Edward Waite and Aleister Crowley knew each other. They were both in the club at the same time. But the Crowley deck wasn't published until much, much later, right? A little weirder, a little more occult, but still with the court cards being princess, where queen. Even though by the time the 40s rolled around, a lot of those kingdoms had been toppled, right? So there we have the Thoth, the Marseille, and the RWS, right? So let's pose the question, do we even need quartz in modern tarot? And it's an interesting question. Do we need quartz at all? Do we need more quartz? There are no knights, there are no princesses. Well, England still has actual royalty. There are some places that still have actual royalty. But in this modern age, in these modern countries where most of us live, we don't really relate to it. So what happens is people begin to call them things like the mother, the father, the son, the daughter. That works for me. I don't mind that at all. Or what are some of the other things they call it? Oh, did I bring it? I did. Okay. So if you want to take all the royalty, all the civilization, all the things that people might find offensive, you might want to look at something like the Primordial Tarot. And they ask you to just look at the suit through color. And they call it the initiate, the hero, the mother, the father. Okay? But still, even in something that is basically asking you to put yourself in a time before there were courts, kings, queens, etc. That's a time before. That's not really moving forward, is it? Or is it? Okay. So, many deck creators have changed the courts to try and turn them into something either that goes with the theme and idea of what they're trying to bring across, or at least to take away some of the colonialism and people don't like royalty anymore so much. Royalty represents a time when the people who weren't royalty were kind of oppressed, right? All right. So let's look at some of these other decks, okay? If there is not 78 cards, is it tarot? Some people are very, very strict about this, right? Some people feel that, oh, you know what? Hang on just a second. Sorry, I just realized I didn't have any incense going and left my brain weird. Okay, so some people are very strict about this. If there is an extra card, say in the Way of the Panda, there's a Fairy God Panda card. I leave that in. In the Tarot of the Abyss by Anatolian, there are extra cards for the Three of Swords or the Ten of Swords. Some people leave them in. Others choose one and make sure they have only 78 cards. Honestly, you could take out any cards you didn't agree with or didn't like. For instance, say, what is that deck? The deck with the war card as the emperor. I didn't like that, so I didn't buy the deck. Am I missing out? Could I have just removed the war card and gone ahead with it that way? I tend to want all the cards, and if I think that extra card adds something extra, if I think it would give a reading value, I would leave it in there. In the Playful Heart Tarot, she originally, I think, gave us 3 or 4 extra cards, and then you could buy another 10 extra cards for that deck. I leave them all in, okay? I think all of them have something to offer. But in my Touchstone Tarot, I do not leave in the Happy Squirrel because in that deck, I don't know that it adds anything. All right, so let's look at some decks. So here's, I was just talking about this morning. This is the Tabulam Mundi, the colored edition, Arcanis Colorum. And this deck is loaded with all the extra stuff. The sun in Gemini. This is my birth card. This is when I was born, when the sun was in Gemini, or the third decan of Gemini. Right? So we have all this extra stuff loaded onto it. And yet she still calls it a queen because this artist has great respect for the system and the specialness that is offered in the Thoth deck, the moon in Aquarius. This deck would not be the same if you took out the quartz. It would be incomplete, in my opinion. Okay? You could do whatever you want with your cards. That's the Tabulam Mundi by M.M. Moline. All right? This deck, I was talking to someone on on YouTube the other day in the comments. When Jonasa Jaus originally did this deck, she wasn't even a tarot reader. She was an artist who had read a book on Marseille. I wouldn't take any cards out of this deck. I love what she's done with the plant energy and the limited color palette and kind of the different modern ideas. To me, this is one of the ways that tarot has become modern, just because artists have decided that they want to give it a shot. Let's do a tarot deck. Let's see if I can make a living in this area of art, right? Okay. Here's another one. I mean, this was a giant release when it first came out as an indie deck, and then as a mass market. The Fyodor Pavlov still has those same court cards, still has the 78 cards. But he has taken this kind of medieval or 18th century idea and given us a modern take on it. Given us the things that the tarot community together has decided we want to see more. We want to see different types of people who deserve to be seen. We want to see gay couples. We want to see people of color. We want to see Asian people. I want to see a pregnant person. I've been pregnant a few times. Look how beautiful. Where is it? I'm looking for, I was just looking at this beautiful temperance card. I've always really liked this hermit. We want to see families with two moms. We do. We want to see strong women. And we want to see trans people identified and in the game. They've always been here. They've always been here. To separate them and say, you don't deserve to be in this tarot deck is wrong. So we want to see that, right? So tarot has, due in some part to pressure from the people who buy and collect cards, it's moved forward. It's changed. It's adapted. Even some of these earlier decks have dared to take out some of that some of the cups, wands, swords business, right? Cups, wands, and swords doesn't work for everyone. This is still a tarot deck. It still has 78 cards. It's still going to address all the archetypes that are in humanity. And that was another part of the question. Are those archetypes still relatable? Do they change? I don't think the archetypes themselves change. I think humans are humans are humans are human. We are all earthly creatures, okay? I think that language changes. And although it's a game, this is the Raven's prophecy, tarot is also people looking at themselves. We all look up. We all wonder what's out there. We all look inward. We protect each other and ourselves. We're curious. We need to touch each other. So even if you take the numbers and words away, you can still enlighten yourself and others. But it's still tarot. Still has 78 cards, right? Different types of art within the same structure also works. Sometimes it's confusing because we change the labels, we change the artwork, but the perception of tarot is that you take the cards brother instead of knight. You lay them in a certain way, mama instead of queen. And you try to use your intuition to answer the question, right? All of these decks can do that. Many of them are a little strange if you're used to looking at Pamela Coleman Smith's artwork or the Marseille. Now there are some, okay, last three decks, all right? There's some artists who stick with the words but can give you an entirely different story. So we don't have our regular Fool. And yeah, this is the extra card, but I leave it in there. What we have is numerology, color. We live inside the story that is told by these majors, but we still have the same archetypes. So the framework can be changed. Not everybody is going to enjoy that. I do. I love it. I love the idea of switching around the numbers, of taking the cards, say, as people have done with the Hush Tarot or the Nicoletta Ciccoli Tarot, and switching them around, right? Hang on just a second. Okay, so these last two are... okay, so Colin, when he did Ocean Dry, he still had 78 cards, 79 with the extra card. And he still had the numerology, he still had the court cards. But this Hieronymus Bosch by Travis McHenry, he didn't work in the tarot framework. He didn't give us 78 cards. He gave us a bunch of different things. The 7 deadly sins. What I particularly love about this deck, despite the fact that it really twisted tarot up, each of the suits, and I think there are 7 suits, has only like 8 cards, and most of them are quartz. You're welcome. Some of the suits have nothing to do with any elements. This deck was built around the artwork, which I think was a genius thing to do. He found parts of the artwork that were obvious, that were speaking to our human lives, and in particular, the human lives at this period in time. And he built a deck of tarot around it. And it's tricky. Our brains want to go the same direction. Human brains like repetition. They like the same. We're herd animals. We like to move together and move in similar patterns, and we don't like change. And we don't like out and out, like not just change, but completely, I can't figure this out change. Okay? So just use the deck, shuffle it, put it with another deck, put it with an oracle that you like. You'll love it. It's really fun. And then, of course, my beloved Botanical Deck by Jessica Bott. When she built this deck, she built it to be 2 decks in the same box. Is this? Oh, sorry, upside down. So the trees are the major arcana. Okay, that's the only suit where there are 22 cards. Cacti are swords. What do we have here? Mushrooms is another suit. It's the suit from the oracle. Spices are wands. What do we have here? Weeds. That's an extra suit. So despite the fact that this is more than a tarot deck, you can use it as a tarot deck. And the reason you can do that is because she made it so all the cards are the same size. They have the same backs. It's a bear to shuffle, but I figured it out. And with plants have a lot of different ways that they come into our life. Plants are more than humans. They've been here much, much longer. Their culture is much, much more diverse. Okay? And we have a lot to learn from plants. So I totally left off my my little cheat sheet, but short answer, yes and no. We love our direct, traditional Marseille RWS Thoth decks, but we really love when people think out of the box and give us something new and bright and wonderful. So thank you, Simon, for the question. It was really good. And thank you for coming. Bye.